The crowd is actually there to introduce our guest, Dave Macko, who was nice enough to buy the airtime at the WRUW telethon. So he can come in here and say his bit. So I'm going to fade myself into the background. Dave, have at it.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Libertarian candidate for state representative in Ohio House District 17. That includes Lyndhurst, Mayfield Heights precincts A, B, C, K, L, M, N, and O, Hunting Valley, Moreland Hills, Pepper Pike, Chagrin Falls and Chagrin Falls Township, Bentleyville, Solon, Glen Willow, Oakwood, Walton Hills, Valley View, Independence, Seven Hills, Brecksville, and Broadview Heights. I'm going to be giving a lot of information over the next few minutes, so if you have a paper and pen ready, I highly recommend that you get ready to use it. My website is www.mackoforliberty.com. That's MACKOFORLIBERTY.com. My email address is dmacko, MACKO, @roadrunner.com. You may also call me at 440-248-8620. I'll repeat this again near the end of the program. I will never vote to increase your taxes or fees. I will never vote to impose new taxes or fees if you elect me. I will always strive to restore our liberties and reduce the size of the Ohio government to its proper function of protecting the lives, liberty, and property of innocent people. That is the most important function of government in Ohio and everywhere. The greatest threat to our liberties right now is the federal government in Washington, D.C. I will work to nullify all unconstitutional federal laws and forbid federal officials from enforcing unconstitutional laws in Ohio, and to sequester those federal taxes which don't fund constitutional purposes if that becomes necessary. This is the best peaceful way to abolish Obamacare or socialized medicine without drastic measures to restore liberty. I urge all of you to read Nullification, How to Resist Federal Tyranny in the 21st Century by libertarian scholar, economist, and historian Thomas E. Woods, Jr. Every citizen who wants to restore liberty and reduce the FedGov to its constitutional limits should read this book, which may be the most important book of 2010. I call it my campaign manual. I urge all of our libertarian candidates in Ohio to read it. By the way, we have a full slate of libertarian candidates. Ken Mattis for governor. Charlie Earl for Secretary of State. He was actually in the legislature for 2 terms in the 1980s. Mark Feldman for Attorney General, Matt Cantrell for Treasurer, and L. Michael Howard for Auditor. All of these are good people. If you don't have a Libertarian candidate running in your area, I'd recommend voting Constitution Party or any other alternate party unless you have a Ron Paul Republican or a Thomas Jefferson Democrat. Getting back to Nullification, How to Resist Federal Tyranny in the 21st Century, Dr. Woods has studied the history of nullification, which was the political concept devised by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison in 1798 to encourage the governments of Kentucky and Virginia to resist the unconstitutional Sedition Act and the very questionable Alien Acts. Dr. Woods clearly shows how ridiculous it is to suppose that a branch of the FedGov, namely federal courts, could do much to resist federal power, and how absurd it is to allow the FedGov to be the arbiter of the contract between it and the sovereign states. This is what has caused us to move steadily toward tyranny for the past 200 years. He explores the use of nullification by Jeffersonian Democrats in the 1790s and by Federalists in the War of 1812, including Daniel Webster. Although generally considered a nationalist, including by establishment historians, Webster proposed nullification as a moderate means of opposing a proposed draft measure, which would avoid the extremes of submission and secession. Nullification was proposed by both sides before the War for Southern Independence. Opponents of the fugitive slave laws and Southerners who wanted to preserve their institutions Both appeal to the concept. Many states are passively nullifying the Police State Real ID Act. See www.realnightmare.org for more about this evil measure. The authors of the Declaration of Independence and the father of the Constitution provided yet another immensely valuable political concept which we can use to restore our liberties peacefully, God willing. Nullification is a responsible, moderate, peaceful way to respond to federal police state tyranny without submission or martyrdom on one hand or secession or armed revolution on the other. I oppose the invasion of Ohio. While our situation here in Ohio is nowhere near as desperate as in California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, where people are being murdered or kidnapped by invaders, I support constitutional federal laws, especially immigration laws, and will promote an Arizona-style law for Ohio to end the immigration invasion. Patriots rightfully denounce the federal government for grossly violating its constitutional limits, but the FedGov does have some constitutional functions and duties. One of them is to protect us from invasion. That's Article 4, Section 4. Since it has abrogated that duty, it is up to Ohioans to defend ourselves. I will always be vigilant to make sure that the immigration invasion and its crimes, excessive expenses, and other burdens on taxpayers will never be used as an excuse for us to give up our liberty. As Benjamin Franklin stated, they who can give up essential liberty to obtain a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. I want to start getting out of the Depression. I was advocating getting rid of the state income tax within 2 years, but our candidate for governor, Ken Mattis, at the news conference at the state capitol last Monday, which was generally ignored by the establishment media, has proposed getting rid of it next July 1st. And so I'm quite willing to go along with that. I also want to repeal local income and property taxes and reduce the state sales tax to no more than 3% within 2 years, and reduce government spending to that level. Now, some people have concluded from this that I like sales taxes. That is not true. I just despise them less, and they are somewhat more under the control of each taxpayer because you decide how much you spend. The income tax is not necessary. Ohio prospered without it from 1803 to 1972. Income taxes were promoted by Karl Marx as one of the 10 planks of his diabolical Communist Manifesto. And as long as property taxes exist, nobody owns property. We merely rent it from the government. Marx's attempts to implement his evil philosophy caused the deaths of over 100 million people in the 20th century. So I want to phase these out now. We need to repeal the Ohio minimum wage laws. This will also help us get out of the Depression. Although you need to vote for our Libertarian candidates for Congress, including John Jelinek in the 14th District and Jeff Goggins in the 10th District, so they can abolish the Federal Reserve System, restore honest money, and see to it we have no more depressions. As I said, the Ohio minimum wage law should be repealed. All other laws and regulations which hinder the economy should also be repealed, and irrational schemes such as the slow train from Cleveland to Cincinnati should always be rejected. A Kenyan runner could run almost as fast as the slow train. I want to restore the right to keep and bear arms. There should be no laws preventing adults or mature children with the permission of their parents from bearing weapons openly or concealed unless they are in prison. In Vermont, anyone can carry without any registration or other impediment. Vermont has one of the lowest crime rates in this country. If weapons owners want reciprocity with other states, then they can be issued an official card by the state, which should cost no more than a business card. No records of these should be kept. I support laws such as Montana and Tennessee have passed to exempt all guns and ammunition which are manufactured, sold to, and used by Ohioans in Ohio from all federal gun laws. Nullification should be used to stop the unconstitutional, thuggish Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives from operating in Ohio. I support the right to life from conception to natural death. If you give government the power to decide who is a human being, you have lost the battle to restore liberty. In Bolshevik Russia, the royal family, Orthodox priests, businessmen, and the nobility were considered as less than human, and the government massacred tens of millions of people. In National Socialist Germany, Jews, gypsies, homosexuals, Slavs, and others were considered less than human, and the government massacred tens of millions of people also. We need to nullify the Roe versus Wade decision and return to the pre-1973 penalties in Ohio for committing abortion. If that's not sufficient, they should be increased. I recommend that all of you look at the website www.l4l.org. That is Libertarians for Life. That's L4L.org. Also, I recommend the separation of school and state. You should see www.schoolandstate.org. It is the responsibility of parents, not the state, to feed, shelter, and clothe their children. It should also be their responsibility to educate them. Karl Marx, the satanic enemy of humanity who founded communism, promoted government public schools as one of the 10 planks of his Communist Manifesto. Prussia became the first nation in Europe to establish government schools to militarize children under Frederick the Great. The benefits to parents who educate their children in parochial or other private schools or at home, as well as those who have no children or whose children are grown, are obvious. Nobody should ever be ashamed to vote against school levies. Pending abolition of the public schools, I favor ending compulsory attendance laws. Also, all tax money should follow the child. I will work to gradually phase out the government schools and the property taxes which finance them within 3 years, providing sufficient time so that those children who are actually being educated will not suffer. Good schools can convert themselves into private businesses after paying the taxpayers for their infrastructure. I will work diligently to prevent harassment of school teachers pending abolition of the government schools. Full tax credit should be given for donations to any educational activity. I want to end the drug war immediately. We had no drug laws in this country until the Harrison Act of 1914. Marijuana was legal from 1789 to 1937. The drug war is a violation of liberty. The rights of adults to use whatever substances they wish should be honored. All federal and state drug laws should be repealed or nullified immediately, and all innocent prisoners should be freed. Among the many benefits of relegalization are more space in our prisons for criminals and more time for police to solve crimes. Just as adults should not be regulated by governments as to what they choose to put in their bodies, so governments should not engage in forced medication. I favor the end of compulsory fluoridation of water supplies by local governments and all other involuntary medication, including forced vaccinations, much of which appear to be responsible for autism and the growth of other serious problems. In a free society, every individual should decide whether or not to use any substances, internally or externally. I support marriage and the family. Marriage should be restored as a sacred institution between the contractors and God. For those who regard it simply as a contract, the only duty of the state is to guarantee the contract, not to dictate its terms. I favor restoration of fathers' rights. Imprisonment for failure to pay child support should end now. This is no different than debtors' prisons. The bias of family courts towards females should end. Mothers who prevent fathers from seeing their children according to divorce agreements should be punished. Alimony should be abolished. For more information, and get your pencils or pens and paper ready again, see www.stephenbaskerville.net. That's STEPHENBASKERVILLE. This is a site about the divorce regime, family court corruption, and government's war on fathers. I will fight to prevent child kidnapping in Ohio by Children's Protective Services departments. We don't want another Texas incident here. We don't want anything of that sort here in Ohio. I favor ending all federal and state funding for protective services departments so that they must be accountable to their local communities, assuming that such departments should exist at all. We need to restore justice. Juries have the right to determine the law and the facts of each case.